This is R2D Tech and we're finally back with another video. This time we're going to be talking about robotic vacuum cleaners, which is very exciting, whether they're worth the money, whether they do a good job at cleaning, and in particular whether the one I've been testing out over the last couple of weeks, which is the Ecovacs Deebot N8 robotic vacuum cleaner, is any good. So stay tuned. As obvious as these may seem, it's worth considering why you might want to get a robotic vacuum cleaner in the first place. And for me at least, it's because it saves a lot of time and energy, and both of these are money in today's society. So that's the first reason. The next reason is that it seems to do a better job than I would at covering the main area of rooms. Because of the smart patterns it creates, it doesn't really miss many spots, whereas if I'm hoovering and I'm tired, I'm really likely just to do a general clean and miss quite a lot of the area of the room. So that's the next reason. And the final one, which is probably my favorite, is that you don't have to be in the house while it's doing its job. I really don't like the sound of vacuum cleaners, especially loud ones. And in general, if I don't have to be in the house while it's cleaning, I won't be. So you save all of that headache hearing that zzz for like 2 hours while you clean the house. Now let's get into the specifics of the robotic vacuum cleaner that I've been testing out, which is the Ecovacs Deebot N8 robotic vacuum cleaner. And I'll go through, first of all, how it works, how the setup works, does it clean well, and all of that. And then at the end of the video, which is probably the most useful part for you guys, is whether it's worth the money and what are the flaws. Like, are there any big flaws that would stop you from getting something like this? So when you first get this thing, it's going to come with a ground station where the robotic vacuum cleaner will go back to charge. And this needs to be positioned somewhere on the floor where there'll be 1 meter space in front of it, so the vacuum can actually align itself and go onto the dock to charge. That's the first requirement. Then you want to put this in a place where you're not going to move it, so it has to be in the same place every time so the robot knows where to find it. And after you've done this, the first time that you put the robotic vacuum cleaner on the floor and you click start, it will do a mapping round of the floor where it will go around really slowly using the laser technology and the bumper which is on the robot, and it will start mapping out your entire floor, whether it's the ground floor that you're on or the first floor. As I said, this first time will take quite a while because it does it very slowly. It has to be more careful since it hasn't seen the space before and it doesn't know where the objects are. Also, it wants to make sure that it can get in between all the different chairs and tables and things to clean properly, and this mapping takes quite a while. You'll be happy to know that once this general mapping is complete, which is the slow part, from then on the cleaning will be a lot faster because the vacuum will know where the general main obstacles are and it will be able to go really quickly between them and slow down as it approaches them. Then it will use the bumper and lasers to very gently tap and navigate around all the objects. Now you might be wondering whether it will get the sides of the walls, and they've thought about that, so they've actually included 2 spinning brushes on the left and right of the vacuum, which will help pick up dust and dirt from the actual edge of the skirting and walls, which is very cool indeed. You can also control the suction power of the vacuum on the app, and it will even automatically detect when it's going on a carpet and automatically increase the suction power, which I think is very cool. It's worth noting that the vacuum creates a sort of smart path so that it won't miss any of the floor area. It normally goes around the perimeter of a room first and then sort of zigzags in between, getting all of the area covered as well, along with in between obstacles, as I said before. So in terms of the actual cleaning area, it pretty much covers everything, apart from certain areas in your house where it might not be able to fit in. Moving on, one of the things which is very nice about this particular robotic vacuum cleaner is that it also mops your house as well if you want it to. So you simply just remove the water tank, which will be empty at first, fill it up, make sure it's sealed, attach the mopping plate on the bottom, which you might want to know is actually washable and reusable, and you attach this back into the vacuum. And it automatically detects that you've attached the mopping plate into the vacuum as well, which is quite nice. Now from there you go on the app, and in cleaning preferences you select low suction because you don't want to vacuum, you want to mop, and you can increase the water level as well. So you can decide how much water it will put on the floor as well. Now from there, it will basically follow the same path as when it's hoovering, except it will automatically detect where carpets are and not go on the carpet, because obviously if you're mopping, you don't really want to mop the carpet as well. I should probably mention that it's important to empty the water tank once you're done, and also remove the mopping pad and wash it so you can reuse it later on. Now let's get on to a quick rundown of what the app provides. So as you can imagine, with a product like this, there are many settings and things you can tweak on the app. But for the basics, you can basically start and stop the vacuum. You can either do an auto clean, where it will basically just go around the entire area that you previously mapped and clean it, or you can select a specific room you want to clean, or even a specific area. Now on the app, you can also set virtual boundaries or boxes that you don't want the vacuum to go in. That might be because you have a fragile object on the floor that you don't want it to hit, or it might be because there's a bit of a difficult part which the vacuum got stuck on during mapping. For example, in my house, there's a small ridge where the back doors are to the garden, and the vacuum kept trying to climb onto it and would get stuck over there. So all I had to do is set a virtual boundary there, and the vacuum from then on didn't go onto that patch over there. I think this is an excellent feature to have, and you don't need any physical tape or anything, especially in certain houses where, as I said, you might have fragile objects on the floor, or certain areas where the vacuum might have got trapped during mapping. So in addition to this, you can also set your cleaning preferences, so how hard the suction is or how much water is released during mopping, and you'll also get notifications via the app on whether the vacuum is stuck somewhere or has been lifted off the ground, and it will tell you once the vacuum has completed cleaning, which is quite nice because if you're out and about, this is quite useful to know whether the vacuum actually finished the job, or if it ran out of battery and needs to continue later, or maybe got stuck somewhere, so you can sort that out. One feature which is definitely worth mentioning, which I've seen lots of people ask about when it comes to robotic vacuums, and that's if it can do different floors. So obviously it can't ascend stairs or anything like that, but yes, there is an option on the app to be able to map different floors in your house, save them under different names, and then the vacuum will be able to clean those other floors. Now, the big caveat here is that you have to move the ground or base station up to that other floor every time you want to do that other floor, or clean that other floor, along with the vacuum. And it will have to be in the same place every time, so the vacuum knows where to start from and where to go back to after it's finished. Now this is a bit of an inconvenience, I think, because the main point of a robotic vacuum cleaner is that you don't really have to think about it. It just does it. You can even set schedules on the app to do it automatically every day. You don't really want to have to move the base station and the vacuum up to different floors. So I personally wouldn't use this feature, but it's there if you want it. And another alternative is just to get a couple of these vacuums if you have different levels to your house. That would definitely be more convenient, but of course there's a price with these things, so it might not work out with your wallet. Now, does this work with Google Home or Alexa, I hear you ask? Since this is a smart product, you'd kind of hope that it would, and yes, it does. It works with both, actually. So you can just say, like, Google, can you start cleaning? And it will do that. With the Amazon one, I have had a bit more trouble trying to get it to work, but it is actually compatible, so you can access it via the Amazon Alexa app and it will clean for you, but I will say that I've had a better experience with the Google Home. Next, let's move on to the important stuff, which is really how well does it clean? And another big question that comes up a lot is this thing good for pets or homes with several pets even? And we'll talk about that now. I actually have 2 cats and 2 dogs in my house, so we have a lot of pet hair being shed on a daily basis, and I'm sure you're wondering whether this thing will do a good job with that. The short answer is yes, it does an absolutely excellent job, at least from what I've seen in the past couple of weeks. As long as you maintain it properly, you know, empty out the bin often and clean the filters, it will suck really well. In fact, that's one of the upsides of this particular robotic vacuum cleaner. The suction power is absolutely great and actually quite a lot higher than a lot of the other options out there. It picks up a lot of dog and cat hair or pet hair in general, which I found from using it. And it actually picks up a lot more than I would just cleaning myself, because I tend to miss a lot of spots. As I said earlier, that's one of the pluses with one of these. It does a smart pattern around your floor, so it doesn't really miss anything. Whereas if you were cleaning yourself, you're likely to miss quite a lot of the area. The other good thing which I've mentioned is that it does go in between all the obstacles like chairs and tables and other things like that, so it doesn't really miss too many spots. But obviously there is a bit of a limitation in terms of the size of the robot and where it can fit. So that's very dependent on what your floor layout is like, how narrow your chairs are, and if it can't fit somewhere, you might have to clean those bits manually every so often. Another plus is that this thing is very quiet compared to most robotic or even normal vacuum cleaners, while still having quite a lot of suction power. That's great for me because I don't really like the sound of vacuum cleaners. They give me a headache, but this one's done a really good job at keeping the noise levels quite low. Also, I'm sure you're wondering how the battery life is on this thing, and I'm happy to say that it's pretty great. My house is moderately sized, or at least the floor that the vacuum is on, and when it finishes, it normally has about 50% battery left, which is great. Now, if you had a mega mansion or something like that, it would probably have to stop cleaning to go back and recharge and continue later. But that's not really a big deal, especially if you're not even in the house while it's doing it and it's not you that's having to clean or anything like that. So it doesn't really bother you. But what I just said there is another plus, which is that it automatically detects when it's low on battery and gets itself back to the charger before it runs out, and then continues automatically if you want it to later on. That's one of the things that I've been really impressed about with this vacuum cleaner, which is just how smart it is, how compatible it is with other devices, how it knows when it's low on battery and goes back to charge, how it doesn't miss obstacles like chairs but goes under them. They've really seemed to have thought of everything. Now that's a lot of pros I've just talked about. Let's look at some of the cons, which personally are not a deal breaker for me, but might be in your particular situation. So first up, the vacuum cleaner does have a certain size to it, you'll be surprised to know. It's not infinitely small. So if it can't actually fit in a certain area, like say your chairs are actually really narrow and it can't fit between them, then it won't be able to clean there and you'll have to do that manually later on, which isn't a huge deal since it will still cover most of the area of the floor, but every so often you will have to clean in those areas that it can't reach, like on the side of your sofa or underneath certain objects that it can't fit in. Also, if you have a big step on your floor or something like that, it won't be able to get over that, so you'll have to either move the base station and map that as a different floor, or have another hoover there, or just clean that area yourself. On a similar theme, you'll have to remember to keep your doors open so that it can actually reach or get to all of the different rooms, which probably goes without saying, but I've actually forgotten quite a few times to open the ground floor doors, and it's ended up being stuck in a certain room and not being able to clean the rest of the house. That's not really a downside, I guess, but definitely something to remember when you're using this product. Secondly, because of the way this thing works, when it maps your floor the first time, it will expect objects to be in a certain place. So if you move those objects, or you have other small obstacles which aren't normally on the floor, when it cleans, it can hit them with quite a lot of force because it moves quickly between the expected obstacles. And so if you have like an object which is quite fragile, which you just put on the floor, which isn't normally there, it might well damage it or scratch it. So you definitely want to take that into account. What you can do to avoid this is, say you have lots of small objects on your floor which you don't want it to hit, you can put a boundary there on the app, a virtual boundary, so it won't go there. Thirdly, this one's either a pro or a con depending on what you prefer, but the vacuum cleaner has speakers and it will announce when it starts cleaning or pauses or finishes cleaning and things like that, basically just status updates. So if you don't really want that, that can be a bit annoying, but there might be a way to turn that off in the app. The final downside is that obviously this thing is going to accumulate a lot of dirt and dust, which you have to empty every so often. Now the actual bin which collects this isn't too big in the vacuum cleaner, and it's the same for most robotic vacuum cleaners, to be honest. So every cycle or every few cycles you'll have to empty this. It's very easy to do. You simply take it out, empty it into your bin, and then they provide a brush which you can use to clean out the filter a bit better. This will just make sure that it sucks better the next time you clean and doesn't get clogged up. There's also obviously a spinning brush which helps collect dust on the underside of the vacuum cleaner, which you'll want to take out and clean every so often. These maintenance steps might seem trivial, but they're very important in ensuring that the vacuum cleaner lasts a long time. If you let it get completely out of hand, completely clogged up with like hairs and things like that, especially the brush on the bottom, then you can jam the mechanism. It might not work so well in the future. You'll have to replace parts sooner rather than later, and it can be a bit of an inconvenience. So I definitely say that maintaining this thing properly is definitely the way to go if you want to keep it for a good few years. So those are the downsides. Depending on your particular house layout, some of them might be inconvenient for you and might cause you not to get this, especially the one with small steps where it struggles to go over small steps. But I'm guessing for most of you out there, just like me, this vacuum will be able to navigate your floor just fine and do a great job. Now you're definitely wondering, how much does this thing cost? It is quite expensive. It's about £260 because on Amazon they currently have a bit of a deal for this thing. But I'd say if you compare that to some of the other robotic vacuum cleaners out there, like the Dyson ones, which probably don't even do as good a job, it's a very reasonable price. And you have to think, if you're going to keep this for a few years, it's going to save you a lot of time, a lot of energy, and I'd say it's definitely worth it, but obviously it's up to you. An additional cost in the long term will be replacing certain parts like the brushes and the filter in the vacuum cleaner, which you have to do with any vacuum cleaner anyway, but that will run you about £30 because you can buy a bundle on the Ecovacs website, and I'd say you probably have to do that about every year. To me at least, this seems pretty reasonable, and obviously the better you maintain the vacuum throughout its life, the longer it will last and the less often you'll have to replace parts like this. So that's how it works, along with the pros and cons. I'd say from personal experience over the last few weeks, it's been an excellent purchase. It's been doing an amazing job. As I said, I have 2 cats and 2 dogs and they shed a lot of hair, especially now that it's getting hotter and we're almost in the summer. So personally, I'd be happy to recommend this vacuum cleaner since it's been doing such a great job over the last few weeks in my house, and I've been very impressed with just how smart it is, especially compared to some of the older vacuum cleaners or robotic vacuum cleaners that came out like a few years ago. For most people, this will be an excellent product and will do a great job, but you need to think about your personal circumstance, your personal floor space. Are there a lot of places where the vacuum wouldn't be able to get into? And if so, maybe this product isn't for you because you'd anyway have to be doing a lot of manual cleaning as well. But I would say that it will still clean the general area quite well, even if it can't get into all of the different places. So that will still save you a lot of time in terms of cleaning. But for most people out there, I'm guessing, like me, the vacuum can get into most places, under most chairs and tables, and do an excellent job, and essentially in the long term save you a lot of time and energy and frustration, because let's be honest, most of us don't like cleaning. That's it for this week. I'm really excited to be back making videos. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below and I'll be sure to respond to them as soon as possible. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.